New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on our site. We do not endorse any recommendation or opinion made by any member or physician, nor do we advocate for any treatment. You are responsible for your own medical decisions. Now, I'm going to turn over the introductions of our speaker to Martha Butterfield, our program coordinator of NJCTS. Marty?
Thanks, Kelly, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. Before I begin the introduction of tonight's presenter, I'd like to call your attention to the slide on your screen about our annual family retreat, Camp Bernie 2013. Registration for camp will be closed as of May 10th. Space is limited, so if you're interested in attending, don't delay. Electronic registration is available on our website. Camp Bernie has been described by one of our families as one of the best weekends of the year. For families living with TS, it's a great opportunity for kids to make friends and for parents to connect with other families. Now to the introduction of tonight's presenter, Dr. Graham Hartke. This is Dr. Hartke's second webinar for us. His previous presentation in 2011 was on anxiety and its impact on sports, academics, and performance. This webinar is available for free download on our website. Dr. Hartke received his undergrad and graduate degrees from Rutgers University. He's a licensed psychologist with a private practice in Roseland, New Jersey, where he works with children, adolescents, and adults, providing psychological therapy and assessment. He specializes in cognitive behavioral treatment of anxiety disorders, including OCD, as well as Tourette syndrome, behavior management, ADHD, ODD, high-functioning autism spectrum disorders, and sport performing arts. In addition to being the school psychologist at Shepherd School in Morristown and Kinnelon, New Jersey, he is director of their extended school year summer program and serves as their anti-bullying coordinator. And when his schedule permits, he serves as an outreach presenter for our organization, presenting workshops for students, educators, and other professionals across the state. We're delighted to have him back, so without further introduction, I'll turn the presentation over to you, Dr. Hartke. Welcome.
Thank you, Marty. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar tonight. I'd also like to thank, again, Marty and Kelly, and I'd also like to thank Faith Rice and everyone at New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome for inviting me to present this webinar. Finally, I'd like to welcome all of you and thank all of you for participating tonight. Okay, so today's talk is on iSocialSkills, and we're going to discuss strategies to help students, parents, and educators to reduce risk, cope with challenges, and utilize interactive technology in pro-social ways. Okay. The goal of today's presentation, or the overview of today's presentation, is to discuss the impact of technology and then go into strategies. At the end, I will provide some resources and take questions. So the goals of the presentation today include to provide information on the impact of technology, including communication, learning, attention, and socialization. We'll also cover some other areas. And the second part is to discuss strategies to help students, parents, and educators cope with risk, challenges, and use technology in pro-social ways. I do have a challenge for everyone tonight. And being that we're talking about iSocialSkills, to avoid distractions, I challenge everyone that's participating to keep your phones off during the presentation. And not only that, put your phone somewhere where you can't answer it or see it. Obviously, if you need to have your phone close by, do that. But it's a challenge to see if you could avoid, not looking at your phone for the duration of this presentation, which is becoming increasingly challenging. As technology advances and we get smarter phones and more engaging technology. So for an introduction, I want to get everyone in the mind frame of tonight's talk, and I want everyone to think about, just how did you talk to your friends when you were in school, when you were a kid or adolescent? Did you have face-to-face talk? Was that the primary method? Did you play games where you had two cans and a string? Did you have a landline phone, whether it be rotary or touchstone? Did you write handwritten notes and pass them in class or flick them across the room to your friends in class? Did you have dial-up internet, the original versions of America Online, Prodigy, or CompuServe? And did you chat on those sites in chat rooms? Did you have a cell phone, one of the the earlier cell phones, like a Nokia phone, where there was a little bit of text messaging going on? Maybe you used all of these, maybe used more. Also, kind of along with the how question, just consider the where question, the when question, the what question, and the who question. So where did you talk to your friends? When did you talk to your friends? What style of communication did you use? And who did you talk to? I'm guessing that for many of you, it was you had a lot more face-to-face talking than over media if it was several years ago. Did you talk at home, in school? Did you talk to your friends 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Did you use communication that was instant or transient? Or did you communicate non-verbally? Was your communication done privately or in public? Was it anonymous? Did you post anonymously somewhere? And who did you talk to? Did you talk to your classmates, people you interacted with face-to-face every day, family, friends? Or were you interact with people that were your age, people your parents knew, or even strangers? And I'm sure just by looking at these questions, you could see when you think about today's kids that the answer to these questions for them might be completely different than what some of us had as kids. Okay, so we're going to talk a little about the impact of technology, and as a disclaimer before we even start this presentation, this webinar is only designed to be about 40 to 50 minutes long, and the topic we're talking about tonight could probably be a several-week workshop or conference on all of these areas. So there's many areas of technology impacts that we could talk about, and every day when you look in the newspaper and on TV, there are articles, when you look in journals on the impact of technology. So what I'm going to give you today is kind of a summary of some areas that relate to kids. Now here's just some stats to get started. The estimates, and these might be low because they're from 2010, and that was before smartphones really took off. I mean, right now smartphones are huge. But back in 2010, the estimates were that between 8 to 18-year-olds spent 9 or more hours a day accessing digital entertainment. And that's a huge number, and I would guess that it's probably low. You could see the other numbers on this chart, that 95% of teens use the internet. 74% of the teens that use the internet use it from their phones. So kids are accessing the internet from wherever they are on their phones. And another key point here is where it says 80% of teens use online social networking. And the number is probably even higher because, like I said, the data is a little bit older. The graph on the bottom shows an internet use chart from national data showing up to about 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds in 2010 use the internet. And I would assume that all these bars would go up if we had more current data. Just some other stats. A study that just came out from a study done in Israel showed that 94% of high school students that were surveyed in this large study said they used their cell phone during class. And most of those students use their cell phone for Facebook, YouTube, or taking pictures. Some of the students said they use it for schoolwork, but by far the majority was using it for those reasons. 31% of kids say they use media while doing homework. That number also might be pretty low. And this is what I find pretty interesting is the percentage of teens and kids who say they have rules about their tech use. So when kids and teens were surveyed, 46% said they had rules about TV shows they can watch. Only 30% had rules about video games they could play. 26% had rules about music they were allowed to listen to, and about half had rules about what they can do on the computer. Now those statistics are what the kids and teens said, so they might be lower than what the parents would have, but it does paint a picture that a lot of kids think they don't have many rules about technology. And speaking with demographics, girls tend to use more social networking, listening to music and reading when they're connected online, and boys spend more time overall on video games and watching videos. But both groups do all those areas and more. It's really difficult, like I said before, to capture the entire picture of what we're talking about with this technology, but in general, social networking, Facebook has billions of users that are on every day. Smartphones, cell phones, chatting, computers and streaming devices, and virtual worlds, and virtual gaming. Just up to the chatting real quick, there are so many different websites right now for kids to chat and connect on that it's very difficult for parents and schools to keep up. Every day, kids are coming into schools or, and talking about new sites they're on, new ways they're communicating. So once kids get, they get kicked off one site, they find another site. So on here are some sites that kids go on to talk, communicate, Steam, Vent, Snapchat, Snap Roulette, and Omegle, which are all, those three right there are very interesting because kids can go on and they can, on Snapchat, they can put a picture and send it to someone and it will erase itself after 20 seconds. Chat Roulette and Omegle are websites where you go on and you talk to any stranger and you could just go through a menu and pick whoever you want to talk to. When you're done talking to them, you just switch. Those websites, kids get exposed to all kinds of video and images. Some of them are probably not appropriate. Uvu is another chatting site. A lot of kids are in different chat rooms related to topics they're interested in. So if kids are interested in anime or gaming, they might go into chat rooms related to that. Trolling is a term that you've probably heard that describes people who go on message boards and basically harass other people or make antagonizing comments about them. They're called trolls, or the act of doing it is trolling. And likewise, kids also go on a lot of message boards, similar to the chat rooms related to websites that they are on. And some of these message boards are very intricate communities where kids have entire social lives on these message boards. As far as computers and streaming devices, I had tablets here. I don't know why it was taken off, but tablets is right there. In the virtual worlds on the bottom, the MMO games, it is a $67 billion industry, this video gaming industry. It is bigger than the movie industry right now. And this is a topic that could really be discussed in detail itself. But kids are spending hours and hours of their time on these games like World of Warcraft and similar type games, or on PlayStation, Xbox Live, Nintendo, or computer games where not only are they playing a game, but they're connected and communicating with other people, strangers from around the world. Children are regularly playing in games and talking with adults, and many times, the content and language that are on it are probably not, would not be considered by many parents to be very appropriate. There's a website by a guy named Fred Cavazza, where he has different visual graphs and depictions of how to describe the social media landscape. This is his one from 2012. I just thought it was interesting to put up here ways to kind of define, how you would describe the social media landscape. He divides it up into on the outer ring, different devices, different ways people interact, and different tasks they do when they're on. But a lot of these different, you probably recognize a lot of the logos of popular websites on here have multiple functions. For example, YouTube, not only do kids go on YouTube to watch videos, but some YouTube kids also go on YouTube and have conversations with people on YouTube when they comment on videos, when they comment on people's channels. So it's a combination. A lot of these websites that say they're sharing or just for media have many different layers to them. So the impact of technology on communication. Well, first and foremost, like we just discussed, there are many modalities of communication now that didn't really exist, even 5 to 10 years ago, some of them. Talking over the computer, texting, chatting, posting, going to discussion boards, gaming, blogging. There are even more than that. Sending pictures, instant pictures, live streaming your life. You could have, there's apps like live stream where you could just broadcast everything you do at any moment to everyone out there. Overall, the technology is becoming increasingly more tech-based. So a lot of kids today, their primary way of communicating is sending a text message or chatting over a social network site. Whereas opposed to a few years ago, it was, they might have preferred talking on the phone or face-to-face. Communication is also more delayed. Kids will send a message, they'll respond a few minutes later. Obviously, it's becoming way more public and permanent, and those are two very serious areas that parents and schools are struggling with on a daily basis is that this technology is opening their kids up and their communication to the public, and what they post out there can be there for a long time. Whether it's not permanent forever, but it's permanent, meaning that it's there for a long time. Also, a lot of this communication is unsupervised and anonymous. And kids are also in a world now where communication is 24/7. And when I say kids, I'm not just talking that this only applies to today's kids. It obviously applies to all of us, but the talk is geared towards that population. So I'm trying to just focus and get you in the mindset for what a teenager or a child is experiencing right now. The other part of it is communication is, at least the way it looks online and the social networking sites, is becoming more self-promoting. Some have called it the me, myself, and I generation. People just going and taking a picture of their face, posting online, documenting on Facebook everything they're doing every minute of the day. I'm brushing my teeth right now. I'm going out to the store right now. I'm so bored right now. But it's a lot of this me, myself, and I kind of talk. As far as the impact technology has on learning, information, the first thing that comes probably to everyone's mind is how instant and easy information is to get, and from many sources. The challenge is students must become more savvy of the information they see, and they have to really learn how to distinguish what is a quality and reliable source, or really look at information from several angles. Wikipedia is probably causing schools a lot of trouble right now because it's so easy to get information on Wikipedia, but schools are trying to struggle with kids just to teach them and show them that it's not always the most reliable source. Many ways to access information are there, and there's ways to simulate different situations and manipulate objects. So in certain classes, like biology classes now, kids can do dissections on an iPad. So there's different ways to access and actually learn through the information. A big area, though, of impact of learning is if schools aren't really keeping up, or if they don't keep up with the technology, traditional school experience of sitting at a desk, listening to the teacher talk, and writing things by hand could be very, very different from what the rest of the kids' lives are. And it could cause a lot of trouble for kids because they're not used to attending to someone speaking to them in person for so long. So it can cause some problems for certain kids, and most kids adjust to it okay. And most schools have been integrating technology in a positive way lately, especially with integrating tablets into the schools and having a lot more access to laptops and computers. Now, the impact of technology and attention is also something that is definitely most people listening to this webinar would probably have many examples to give about this, how it affects attention. First and foremost, it's the age of instant everything. People are quick to excitement and quick to boredom. You want to watch that TV show that from the 80s that you forgot about, you type it in Google and you can get it, or you can go on Netflix and watch it. You can watch every episode of it in 3 hours and be done, and then you're bored. It's basically causing a lot of people to have difficulty waiting, being patient, delaying gratification, because we're getting conditioned and used to having everything instant. Also, it's constant stimulation from the technology. The best example is having the smartphone in your pocket. How often people check their smartphones. It's almost as if it's a conditioned response, or it is a conditioned response to always check. You feel the phone in your pocket, and you have to take it out and check it. There could be messages coming from 3 different sources: text messages, voicemail, social networking sites, and you always have to check. And the other part of it is the access is almost everywhere now, because people have the smartphones on them, they're walking around with them, there's computers, there's tablets, and internet service is over Wi-Fi and 4G, and most places have it. And it's almost to a point where it's expected that there'll be access, where if there isn't access, it's getting to the point where people are disappointed because they expect to have internet access. If you've checked into a hotel room lately where they don't have internet access, it's Wi-Fi, you've probably experienced that and probably scratched your head and said, I can't believe they don't have internet access here. And it also affects how the technology causes people to constantly be multitasking and being very distractible. the kind of the quote, a lot of times you look at kids when they're, you're trying to talk to them, they're on their phone, they have their headphones in, and you kind of ask yourself, hello, are you there? Their brains are constantly shifting between tasks. So it's not as if they are at the same time doing 3 tasks at once. Their brain is just rapidly shifting back and forth, and that causes people to be very distracted. And it also, another presentation on its own is talking about the technology in driving, but it is important to point out here that one of the most dangerous areas that this could be distractibility can occur is when our teenagers are getting their driver's license and they're driving and texting, they're checking their messages, they're playing their music in the car. It could cause a lot of distractibility. So impact on socialization. All the areas we discussed already lead up to this. Face-to-face communication is becoming increasingly less common amongst our kids, and communication over devices is becoming more common. It's not to say that face-to-face communication is not going on, but this is a serious concern for many people, because they're wondering if this generation growing up will have trouble talking to each other face-to-face when they get into the workforce and relating to other people. Kind of asking the question of when, where, how, what, and who, like we did in the beginning, of where people are communicating. People are communicating, like right now I'm doing a webinar and I can't see anyone I'm talking to. And so that's affecting, in this case, socialization. It leaves out a lot of the key components of it, which we'll get to the next slide. But a lot of the nonverbal cues that people pick up that you really need to be exposed to and get experience with to get used to how to interpret and react to. Some of our kids aren't really getting as much of that. It also, though, it's not all negative, and a lot of communication and socialization with technology can help a lot of people. In some cases, it can make having friends easier, and it could also make it easier to have enemies. It can relate to more cyberbullying and more sexting situations, which aren't good. And it also could increase the chances of having more dating situations. And it's not uncommon, I don't know if people that are listening, to have kids tell you that they have a girlfriend or boyfriend that lives in another country, or in a different area of the world, or they've met them online, and now they're going to get married in a couple of years, but they've never met the person face to face, and they're not always sure about how old they are, or what their intentions are. So there's a lot of different areas come up with the socialization over the internet. But it also, in general, it can increase or decrease socialization, and it definitely, for some, can have an impact on physical activity and traditional play. Kids will spend many more hours on video games, and then they won't go outside and have more physical activity. So some key areas of social skills and how they relate to the impact of technology. So looking at the key area of perceiving yourself and perceiving others. So what really can be impacted by technology is having an awareness of the impact or implications of one's actions. So posting something anonymously or online when you're not face-to-face, it's much easier to do that for many kids, and they're not always aware of how serious their actions are, and how much trouble that can cause, or how many problems that can cause with their relationships, and also kind of having the idea of their online image, and kind of having some kind of reputation management. So they're not always aware of how they come across to others online, and if they see everyone else posting pictures of themselves, it could be that's acceptable, that's normal, but it might not be giving the image that they want or they're really aware of. So a lot of our kids need help increasing the awareness of themselves and others and the intentions of others, and try to pick up on any clues they can or cues they can, over talking on social networking and those other technology avenues that they don't lend themselves to face-to-face communication. Interpersonal communication, obviously, there's increasingly less face-to-face communication, and it impacts on the quality of active listening. So how well kids can listen to each other when they're having face-to-face conversations. If they're used to a style of communicating that's more delayed and not face-to-face, they might need more practice actually listening to each other talk in face-to-face situations and building conversation skills. And they need to establish meaningful relationships through social media. Reacting to situations is also a really big area of social skills. So kind of that self-management piece. So it really requires, with technology in our kids, is to have good self-control and good decision-making skills. Because if they don't have good self-control and good decision-making skills, they can get themselves in trouble very easily. If they get angry at someone and post on social networking, that's out there for everyone to see, and it can get them in big trouble. Or even maybe not getting in trouble, if they don't have good self-control, they might not develop an online image that they feel comfortable with. And the last part, which really can affect many people online, is kind of a skill of looking at how they evaluate themselves. A lot of people have self-esteem tied to their online identity. The online identity is one and the same with their regular identity. So if something happens online, if they post a picture of themselves and someone comments that they don't look good in that picture, that could be a big impact on it. So really kind of these are some skills that come into play when kids are using technology, and being accountable for their online actions. So knowing that what they do online could really impact others, even if they think that clicking a button and typing a few words is harmless. It could be. It could be harmful. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of areas on this page that we're not going to be able to get into it in depth, but I just wanted to put on here to bring up because they're important. Obviously, technology can definitely play a positive role or a negative role with regard to social skills and functioning if you already have associated any kind of conditions. So if you have Tourette syndrome or associated conditions such as anxiety, OCD, ADHD, technology could be an avenue for you to reach out to others with those conditions, to learn about those conditions. But it could also lead to other problems. So someone with OCD might want to obsessively check their phone, or they might get to a point where someone might get to a point where they cannot get off the TV or the computer. They're just almost develop an addiction to it. So there's lots of different ways that technology can impact those areas. Something I definitely want to point out are sleep problems, and we'll address that in the strategy section. But sleep is definitely impacted by excessive use of technology and looking at bright screens. And a lot of our kids go to bed with their phones right next to their pillows. They're charging their phones right there. They're online or they're playing video games till the minute they go to sleep. Some of them have, many of them have TVs and computers and tablets and phones in their room, so they're playing all night. And this could cause sleep problems. It tricks your brain into thinking that there's more light present than, it's more daytime hours and nighttime hours. And but also, the kids don't go to sleep on time because they're playing games really late. That is something that is very important to address, and we'll talk about it in the strategy section. As far as benefits are concerned, there are, like I said before, many benefits to technology. For some that play video games, studies have found that it can increase information processing and coordination and visual acuity and even memory. In other instances, such as those on the autistic spectrum, and really anybody that uses it in pro-social ways, it can really increase socialization. It can provide an avenue for certain people to communicate with others in a way that feels comfortable to them and meaningful. And it also can link people together that might not otherwise have found each other, especially if they have specific interests. A big thing to consider, which we highlighted in the beginning introductory activity, is the digital divide. It's just the idea of the generational differences, and that's going to play a key when we talk about strategies in a minute. Just how that really, the difference between what parents have grown up with and what kids have been growing up with. So someone who is currently in middle school has basically grown up with the internet being widespread their whole lives. So it really causes a very different way of looking at the world, which is important to keep in mind. And the last area to think about, and there's some really good videos of this on YouTube. If you type this into YouTube, digital footprint is the idea that the kids born today will have a digital footprint left online, on the internet, on computers, on stored devices from the time they are born through their adulthood. So when kids are born, their information is put into a computer in the hospital. When they become a little bit older, 4 or 5, they might set up a Webkins account. Then they'll go and set up a Facebook account. And then everything they do is online somewhere. So the idea that it's very important from a young age to be aware of what kind of digital footprint kids are leaving behind, and parents also contribute to that as well. If you're on Facebook, you see a lot of pictures of other people's kids when they're born. So the technology, what we do with digital technology lasts, and it's there for many years, and it creates an online image for you. And obviously this also kind of makes you think of privacy issues, and if privacy really exists anymore, especially thinking about the recent tragedy in Boston. There were many surveillance cameras everywhere. So even if you're just walking down the street, your information is digitally recorded somewhere. So privacy is really something that today's generation has a different view on than older generations. Okay, so let's talk about strategies. Now, these strategies are for basically anybody. It can be applied to kids who are having extra trouble with internet and technology. It could be strategies for really a general population to just kind of build preventative strategies and coping skills. So that I just wanted to say that because these are really some universal strategies that can be applied. So first, to reduce risk and cope with challenges, we're going to use these SAFE acronyms. So follow the SAFE steps. First, you want to set limits. Next, you want to adopt preventative strategies. Next, you want to follow through with those strategies. And last, you want to educate yourself about the technology, about what your kids are using, and any other factors that might be at play. So to reduce risk, I don't know what happened here. Okay, so setting limits. From day one, you want to set limits on tech use. This is the #1 factor, I would say, of all strategies that all parents and schools combined, and in schools, teachers and counselors should set with their kids. You want to ask all the questions. What are you going to be using? When are you going to use it? Where are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? Why do you need to use this? And who are you going to be using this with? And you want to have rules about things like underage social media usage. Now, Facebook is not supposed to be for kids under 13, but I'm sure there's a ton of kids that are under 13 on Facebook, or a lot of these sites that have age limits. So there are these sites have rules, but that's one of the things you can think about is setting limits. Along with setting limits is setting up routines for usage. So around specific key times and key areas. So these are just some examples. So for bedtime, you could limit usage to 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. They're not allowed to use devices. Kind of get them away from the bright screens before they go to sleep, away from that stimulation. And another kind of good rule is not to have the phones charged overnight in a bedroom, because it's right by your head. It's very easy to access. It's right there. If someone texts you at 3 in the morning, you're going to answer it and you're going to be up. During school, many cell phone companies, I know for sure Verizon does this. I'm pretty sure Sprint and AT&T and the other companies have similar controls, but they have parental controls so you can actually turn off specific features during the day. So you could set it up. Verizon, I think, charges maybe a few bucks a month for it. But you could turn it off so your kids cannot use data during the school day. They can't make phone calls. They can't text. Or you could turn it on and off at your discretion. The other thing is, for parents, I would suggest that you try not to call or text your students during school. This occurs all the time, and it's because everyone has phones now. It's just the way things are, but it doesn't really help in it, and also a lot of times can impact the school. I'd recommend that parents, if they want to talk to their kids, they set up something where they call the school, and the school can get the kid, kind of like you did in the old days. This probably is not going to it probably won't happen all the time, but it's just something to think about. I know schools are struggling with that. Homework can be, using technology with homework, it can be helpful or hurtful to use technology. I just saw a movie where there was a scene where I forget what movie it was, but the teenage daughter in the movie, the parents asked her to hand over her phone, and she said she walked and do her homework, and she walked away with the phone and said, "I use my phone for homework." So, and that's true for a lot of cases, that kids do use their technology for homework, but it should really only be used if necessary. If kids are not using it for their homework, or if there's other technology they can use that's less distracting, I would suggest they use that. You could even suggest they turn off some features. Some kids want to have music on, which can be helpful for some or very distracting for others. They could put on airplane mode where they won't get any texts or phone calls to distract. If not having the phone around is impossible to do. After school, unsupervised time could lead to problems. So you want to know where your kids are using technology. A lot of times they'll go over to their friend's house. If something's not allowed at your house, they'll find a way to get to it. In video games, on the bottom, there's a lot of unsupervised time in video games. Many hours kids spend talking to strangers, and and it's unsupervised. If you're on, connect to the internet like Xbox Live or World of Warcraft. Some more setting limits. Establish consequences for breaking rules and follow through with them. So don't give in after the first tantrum. There's something called an extinction burst, which happens when you don't reinforce a behavior. So someone's asking, you say, you got to give me your phone. You take the phone. They say, I want my phone back, and they start throwing a tantrum. If they throw a really big tantrum and you give the phone back, then they're going to learn that that's, if I throw a tantrum, I'll get my phone back. In some cases, I know with very challenging situations, that's harder to do than others. But really trying to follow through with the rules and stick with them and set firm rules. That's really one of the most effective strategies for this. Don't give your kids smartphones or access to the internet without teaching them about the limits, rules, and consequences, and setting up guidelines. And it leads to what I have on the bottom, kind of the idea of having an internet driver's license. If you think about it, the technology we have that everyone's walking around with is kind of new, and it's not exactly like the Wild West of technology, but there are very few regulations on its use, and it's not enforced very much. And kids get phones at very, a 5 or 6-year-old will get an iPod Touch or a phone that has access to the internet and all different sites at a young age, with exposed to all kinds of risks. Parents are really responsible for assessing whether kids can or cannot, let's say, drive on the internet. So there's no state agency that's going to test your kids on whether they can go on the internet or not. So really the parents, it's their responsibility to really just make sure your kids can get what you call an internet driver's license if they pass your safe tests of responsible usage. And I know that it's hard to always gauge that, but it just, setting firm rules can really help with that. Okay. Now, just some more limits. You could set times for use. You can use schedules. You could use charts. You can gradually expose kids to technology so they don't have all their technology given to them right away. So you might want to give a kid a cell phone to start that only has limited functionality. They can call in a case of emergency. Just some ideas to think about if you think your kids would have difficulty with this. What I would say is, for many people, is it would be a great idea to implement a tech diet. So think of it like a diet you'd have for food, or some kind of activity where you'd be exercising, where you have tech in moderation. You can track your tech with points. The kids can earn time to use technology if they do certain tasks or behaviors. So they do their homework, if they read books, or if they engage in face-to-face communication or physical activities, they can earn points. But just the idea of having a tech diet, and I think that all people would probably benefit from some sort of tech diet. Just kind of limiting how much you're on tech. The numbers in the beginning I presented, up 9 hours a day on media, which are probably low, so it's probably more in the range of 10 to 12 hours per day. That's most of the day that we're connected. And on the bottom here is really to think about contingencies. And have tech as a privilege, not a right. So if you have trouble with technology, or in general, it might be, even if you're not having trouble with your kids, it's not a bad idea to set up the technology as a privilege. So if the kids behave, if they demonstrate safe usage, they can earn usage time by demonstrating the appropriate behaviors. You could also make a contract about tech use. In the references section, there's a website called Safe and Secure Online. They actually have a template that you can use for a contract that you can use for technology with kids. Okay, so adopting prevention is the next step after setting limits. Schedule tech breaks. So Rosen suggests nature breaks and tech breaks. So that kind of goes with the tech diet idea. But even having preventative activities scheduled in where your kids and students will not be using technology. They'll be outdoors, even if it's 15 minutes, exercising, reading books. Also another preventative idea is to remove tech distractions. So when kids are doing homework or they're in certain areas, they're going to sleep, try to focus on what you can control and remove distractions. So have a family computer in a shared room like a living room or a family room. Don't have phones by the bed. So these are things that can be helpful to set up good tech habits. And the other part is to anticipate problems. Know your kids. If you know your kids have certain tendencies, and just anticipate where the problems are and don't be caught off guard. So if your kid has a history of going on certain websites, posting pictures, you should try to focus your preventative efforts on limiting the availability to certain websites or cameras or pictures in those areas. So you want to tailor it to your kids. Next part is to establish open communication about tech. So you want to talk to your kids about tech often. You want to empathize with your kids. You want to listen and learn before judging. So a lot of times your kids might be very invested in what they're doing, and their entire self-image or their perception of the social world revolves around a website that might just seem ridiculous to an adult. So a lot of times just asking the kids, asking them why they're upset or why they really like this website and engaging in a conversation about it that's not judgmental can really open the doors to communication. Kind of using just basic, I really like to know more about this website. Why do you like it so much? Just questions like that, saying, what's up with this website? Those kind of questions can really open the doors, as opposed to, what are you doing on that website? You're just wasting your time. Because a lot of kids, they don't feel like they're wasting their time on it, and all their friends do it. So really, a lot of to open up the communication is important for adults to really empathize. And this as well, teachers and counselors in school play a key role in talking about this technology, because this is where the kids spend most of their time these days, or a lot of their time. Setting up parental controls and privacy settings for all devices is a key area. Know all your devices, know what your kids are using. Try to find out from the companies and from the manufacturers of the equipment how you could turn off certain settings, how you can turn them on. One thing is to turn off the ability for kids to purchase apps without parental passwords. This will stop your kids from downloading any kind of inappropriate apps, or it'll allow you at least the control to know what they're downloading on the devices. You want to teach kids about what I talked about before, like their online reputation or impression management. So teach them about the importance and talk to them about how they look to others. And that's kind of that social skill of being aware of how they come across others, what others might think of them, and what their reputation is. Schools could do a lot of work on this too, talking in counseling groups, and even schools that have social emotional learning set up in their schools use these as examples. You want to set reasonable expectations for use. So have an expectation where if it's important for kids to be exposed to technology because they're using it in school and they're using it when they go into the job force, but you want to set reasonable expectations so they're not using it too much. A key area here is to model acceptable behavior for your kids, and you want to really show them what you're talking about. You want to practice what you preach, because your kids will watch you more than you think. And if they see you on the computer, on your phone, on your tablet all day, and you're asking them to get off, it's not really the best example. So a lot of helping and being preventative is modeling what you want your kids to do. The other thing you do is, if your kids are on a new website, sign up for your own account. Get a feel of the website. See what they're actually using. They don't have to know you have an account, but you could also see what they're doing. And you want to ask the kids about the risk in new sites. They will most likely know more than you think about these areas and can fill you in on this. So the follow-through part in the SAFE acronym is really, you got to consistently follow through and monitor what goes on. So having one conversation 3 years ago with your kids and setting up a contract that never gets looked at is not really good follow-through. You want to have consistent follow-through. Since they're on technology up to 9 to 10 hours a day, you want to make sure you're monitoring their use, and if the problem comes up that you follow through. You want to make sure you have time to follow through. So, saying I have no time to check what my kid's doing, if you don't have time to check it, then maybe your kid can't be on it, because if it's not supervised, then it can lead to risk. So some ways you can monitor: you can document, chart it, you can check devices and social media profiles, you can look at their Facebook accounts. You could require, if you have a young child, that you have to share a Facebook password with them. So if they don't, they can't get their own account. So, they might not like that, but it's a way to monitor it. You could check that the technology is secure. Just always assume that kids will find a ways around your controls too, and don't ever feel comfortable that what you do to block the service will work, because most likely the kids know 5 other ways to get around it, or will find out from their friends. One thing to keep in mind: a lot of the some of the cable companies like Optimum Online and Comcast now broadcast their Wi-Fi. They broadcast it across towns and cities. So let's say a kid's in school and they can't get on websites at the school because the Wi-Fi at school is protected. Kids might be able to take out their smartphone or a tablet at school and connect to Comcast or Optimum Online because they have the password to get on there, or that someone of their friends gave them a password. It might not be your own password. So there's many ways to get around things. They also could use things called proxies to get around certain school-based content blockers, and there's many ways to do that. That's more of a detailed tech conversation right there, but just always assume that they know how to get around it. So you got to stay on top of it. And you want to communicate between the schools and other parents and kids, because between the schools and the other parents, you probably will get a better picture of what's really going on. And when issues come up, you want to address them promptly. You want to report upsetting and offensive content. So if something's really offensive, you can report it to the website. If it's more serious, obviously make sure it gets reported to the police, school, or parents, whatever is the most appropriate. Okay. And the last part of the SAFE acronym is to keep up on the tech issues. So you want to make sure that you educate yourself. So read articles, read books, check. If you just look on the news every day, you'll probably find some more articles on this stuff. There's online forums. I have some resources in the back. Talk to other parents. You want to understand the privacy controls and talk to your kids. So a lot of these areas we kind of discussed already. So when used in a safe manner, the technology can help facilitate and develop pro-social skills. It's not always negative. If it's used in a safe manner, technology can really be helpful. It's a different modality of communication, which makes it easier to communicate for some. And for many, it's a much quicker mode of communication. You can find others with similar interests. There are apps on devices, which is another workshop in itself, just looking at different apps that can help with social skills. There's an app for the iPad and for Androids, such as a program called Conversation Builder, which can be used for direct social skills teaching. There's video modeling if you want to show videos of proper social skills. But if you're having more difficulty with your child and technology, whether it's more of a gaming addiction, getting into cyberbullying, talking and doing risky behavior, you really want to seek more professional assistance, and that is something that is becoming more and more common in counselor and psychologists and other mental health practitioners' offices these days, is dealing with these tech issues. So it's definitely something that I would recommend talking to the school about and seeking more help if it becomes a problem. But these are the strategies I just discussed are some that would probably come up in some kind of treatment, but it would be tailored specifically towards your child. So here's a chart, kind of looking at it from a before, during, and after framework. So before kids get connected online, you want to survey the tech landscape and just find out how it is monitored. You want to learn about how I can monitor and protect this. So if you have a 7, 8-year-old, they're not really connected, which is it's really probably now they've probably already been connected by that age. But let's say you have a kid that's not really online too much. You want to really survey the landscape. Okay, so the next the next part is really, if you go down the chart, is to start developing limits and get some ideas in your head before your kids get connected online, so you can talk to your kids about risk. The during phase, when kids are being connected online, you want to make sure you keep ongoing follow-through and monitoring of your kids' tech. You want to follow through with the limits, and you want to talk to your kids about what they're experiencing online. So you want to make sure that's part of your regular dialogue. And keep talking to the kids about risk at home and school. On the after issues, similar areas to consider, but this is after or if issues arise. You want to follow through with the limits, and you want to implement new limits and interventions as needed. And you want to have a quick response. So you want to talk to the kids about what happened, and you can even use social problem-solving steps to guide the process. We're going to get into some specific skills right now and as we finish up. Okay. So to directly teach and reinforce some iSocial skills, skills should be taught and reinforced through both structured lessons that could be, talking about specifically with a kid in class or at home, and also, very importantly, during teachable moments on an ongoing basis at home and school. So if social skills are not reinforced in real life, they will not be generalized and maintained. You want to keep it simple and focus on core skill areas and skill tools. So, giving a kid a book of social skills which has, 40 different lessons on 40 different topics is not as ideal as giving them some concrete skills that they can apply to many areas. So skills such as being able to identify their feelings, having a keep calm plan, social problem-solving steps, and having some specific steps for electronic conversation skills. So the feeling check-in and identification. It's used to build self-awareness and empathy for others. Okay, this is something where it can be used by parents in schools. You can have a sheet of feelings faces or a chart for them if you want a specific activity, or it could just be discussing and getting the kids used to discussing how they're feeling, describing all the aspects of how they're feeling, what their mood is, how their mood affects their behavior, and how it's appropriate to disclose this information. Is it appropriate to disclose that you're really, really upset online, or is it better to tell someone, like your parents in private? So really talking about identifying their feelings and just how to discuss them and deal with them in an appropriate manner. Kids can practice looking also to kind of identify feelings of others. Kids can practice by looking at online posts of others, and you could have them kind of look at that and say, what do you think this person might be feeling in a situation? Why did they post what they did? With younger kids, it might be easier to do that activity, but with older kids, it might be good to have a discussion about these areas and really say, what could that mean? What are some other meanings to this? If someone says they love you online, does it mean they really love you, or are they just trying to bother you? Without the nonverbal and paraverbal communication aspects, it's very hard to tell what a person means just from what they post online. A keep calm plan is relatively simple in theory, but in practice, kids don't always think of this. But really, to identify two components: identifying the warning signs of their stress, how they know they're getting either upset, sad, angry, mad, and really developing a plan of how they're going to calm down and reduce stress, whether it be breathing, relaxation techniques, taking a break, having a walk, counting to 10, who to talk to, what to do when they get upset. So if they see a post online that is, not appropriate, they could, who are they going to tell when they get upset about it? Are they just going to react immediately, or are they going to calm down first? And kind of along with that is having social problem-solving steps to identify, to really know how to solve problems and social problems when they come up. This can be applied to tech, social skills, and any other social skills. There's many models available, such as Maurice Elias's social decision-making program, which I have it in the resources section. But most social problem-solving steps that you see in social skills, they really have some key components: identifying feelings. So identify how you're feeling, identify what the problem is in a clear, concise manner, identifying what you want to happen, some goals, and developing solutions and evaluating them. Okay, so to kind of end, I'm going to one last iSocial skill tools that are tailored to tech is electronic conversation steps. So talk to you later, TTYL is the acronym to kind of remember. And kids can kind of practice these and see how well they do with this. The first T is to take time before responding. A lot of times what gets kids in trouble is they don't think before they respond. What they're doing is public, and it can be permanent. So an impulsive reaction and putting something mean online, or a comment that might be offensive to others, is not good. So to teach them to take a few seconds before responding. Many adults should probably follow this as well. The same goes for responding to email. So you can teach them to stop, pause, count to 10 as a normal way to react before you respond. The next part is to think about your response. So take the time before responding and think about what you're going to say. How will this look to others? Think about, you can have the kids actually picture, like imagine that everyone is going to see what you write before you write it. A lot of times kids have a tough time imagining that. They think they're just talking to the one person they're talking to. What are the long-term and short-term effects? Next, the why is to yield give a cautious and kind response. So to teach kids that when you're posting online, because it has a permanent and public nature, you want to be safe and nice. Less is more, and often no response is the best response. And last but not least, to look at the results and learn from mistakes. So you want to ask, how did it go? And kind of look back on after you wrote it. So if someone writes a response and, think about what they wrote and try to improve in the future. Okay, so that is the main part of the webinar, and I guess it's going to be turned over to Kelly. Thank you all for listening in. It's the question section now. Just so you know, the resources are at the end of the slides, which are available, I guess, to download, Kelly, is that right?
They have all been emailed before the presentation, and they are available on our website.
Okay, great.
All right, well, this is Marty, and wow, that was one lot of information. And we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to get right to the questions, but I want to start with a comment. This is my comment. This kind of struck me when I was listening to your presentation, that parents, when kids are young, parents are so conscious of their kids interacting with what we'll call strangers. How do you behave and what do you do, and you're always with them and you hold their hand and you don't let them out of your sight. But yet, when it comes to this kind of an interaction, the internet, they don't seem to see it. They don't see the warning signs. They don't, and it seems like parents just aren't paying attention to this part of this very sheltered kid's life in a lot of situations. So what do you think about that? I mean, am I just imagining that, or is that like really, I see it as a problem?
I think parents care just as much about who their kids are talking to, whether it be online or not online. I just think that the technology we have is very advanced, and it's very instant, and it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of it out there. So and it's becoming expected and normal to have instant access in all these ways. So I don't think it's really as much I think the parents are just, the technology's happened so quickly that I think that parents have had a difficult time keeping up with it more than, yeah.
Well, I don't know, this is going to age me, but back in my day, the biggest thing you had to worry about was bringing a book home from the library and whether or not you had to hide it. This is a whole other different realm, and it's, I could imagine parents with a couple of teenagers, 3 teenagers, would be kind of at their wits' ends trying to manage this.
Yeah, it's much easier for me to say, limit and monitor your kids' use than it is in reality. It's just important to keep that in mind. It's a real challenge, and that's really where things are these days.
Wow.
You really saw it during the hurricane, how when people didn't have power, how distraught everybody was and out of sorts. They didn't have this instant technology. Besides being cold and not having heat, that wasn't fun either. But the lack of being able to interact over technology was really distressing, because that's what everyone's used to now.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump into some questions. So,
okay, great.
This was not specifically about a Tourette kid, but it certainly would apply, I would think, across the board to kids with other neurological disorders. But the situation of social cues, body language, and so forth are hard for these kids as they see things in a very black and white situation. So how do you help guide kids who again, have some neurological issues and things are not as black and white as they seem?
Well, really the best way to guide them is to have a uniform front. The school and the parents are really using similar language. Whatever skills you want to work on, it's best to kind of reduce it to some core tools like I described, and have people at school, such as teachers, counselors, reinforcing and working with kids on the same set of skills that the parents are. So, for example, to start off there, so let's say that someone has a lot of trouble really interpreting the intentions of others. The school could have a simple kind of set of steps for identifying feelings, for kind of looking at social cues. The parents should really use those same steps and practice it with them. And the reason is because the research on social skills overall has shown that the most effective social skills training really is when it occurs in multiple settings across multiple years, and the skills are reinforced by many different people in many different settings. So the social emotional learning curriculum that is on the Cassell website, that kind of model is really one of the most research-based social skills curriculums out there, and that's what it's based on. So basically, the model of just teaching a kid, once a week in a social skills group is not going to be enough to really help. It really needs more of a comprehensive effort, and you use that framework and apply it to multiple situations.
Okay. The technology for students with disabilities, especially situations. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I was going to jump to a different question because we kind of covered that. The slide you had about being quick to excite and quick to be bored. Would you care to comment on the current trend among parents to be constantly keeping them busy? There seems to be no downtime for their kids, and do you think that factors into all of that?
Yeah, I think that it definitely the pendulum could swing both ways for many people, where their kids are either constantly on devices or they're constantly running around to other activities like sports or other events, and the kids really definitely need downtime. That needs to be something that is worked into the regular routine of the family. Having scheduled downtime, even short breaks, like I mentioned before, like a nature break or something like that, is important to teach our kids as a skill in a way, kind of like a habit of mind or something that you do, is that we include breaks. But yeah, the whole culture of kind of constantly going, it all leads together to this. You always need to be doing something, whether it be on a device or driving to an event or going from here to there. But kids definitely need some downtime and some time for recreation and to be disconnected for a little bit from activities, or from going to a structured activity or on their phones.
Yeah, and the answer from kid is they don't know how to do anything else, is they're bored. As soon as there isn't something stimulating them, they're bored.
Yep, and that's the problem. It takes time to get kids used to not being on the phone. I mean, and adults are like that too. And that's why I brought up the hurricane example. A lot of people didn't know what to do, and they couldn't, they didn't want to read a book. They want to check their phones or look on the internet. I think the best way is to gradually have a tech diet where you gradually kind of decrease how much you're on the tech instead of just going all or nothing. So add in some breaks, increase the breaks, and start including other activities, or find other activities that are engaging, whether it be physical activities, sports, reading a book, working on a hobby. It definitely takes time to develop that, and it's something that I think you have to actively look into and think about.
And plan for. Okay.
And plan for, yeah.
Do you think the increase in kids with auditory processing issues is related in any way to technology use, in your opinion?
That could be considered a deep question if I look. I mean.
Okay. Well, I don't want to,
I can't really comment. I don't really know of any research showing that it's caused more problems with that. Technology can help people that have difficulties in those areas, through the use of either if they have difficulty with expressive or receptive communication, with hearing. But I can't really comment on. I don't really know any research showing a link between the two.
That's fine.
A causal effect or correlation.
Yeah. I just wondered if you'd had any any thoughts on it at all. There's a question from a teacher about the technology issues, and it seems to this teacher that parents are not setting limits, and technology is changing the face of education. So the thought is, why would you listen to teachers when you can get all the information you need elsewhere? So could you talk about that a little bit?
That's also a really deep question too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's look, I mean, teachers are essential. All the research, or much of the research that is out there on education shows that having an effective teacher is, in some cases, or many cases, the most important factor, at least in the studies that are out there in a kid's education, along with the environment they're raised and reared in. But the effectiveness of a teacher is something that can really make a huge impact in learning with kids. And it's really we're just in a time where technology is increasing so fast that education is having a little bit of difficulty keeping up with it. But kids could really learn a lot from a teacher. Particularly, this talks on social skills relates that really modeling appropriate ways to use technology is a big area. But also, as far as learning is concerned, nothing will replace a really good teacher. I mean, you could read online, but having an excellent teacher makes the biggest difference, and that's what the research shows.
Okay. We're about out of time. I'm going to end with one more question. From what we see in the news, it seems that kids are immature and ill-prepared for the possible repercussions of their digital footprint. So I'd like to end on some further comment on that, because I think kids think that, that sort of thing isn't going to happen to them, that they're not going to get themselves jammed up by passing around a photograph of themselves, for example.
Right. So would you want me to comment on that?
Well, just comment on that possible repercussions of having wrong emails out there about themselves, or sending some kind of a photograph of themselves that is really inappropriate.
Right.
You should really pay attention to that.
Right, and I think most people could probably think of many repercussions of that, and a lot of for example, when the kids are going for jobs, I talk to a lot of college students because through interns and different kids that are in college right now, they're not always aware that a lot of employers are have ways of finding out what they have posted online. If they think things are protected on Facebook, they might be able to find it. Colleges can search and look kids up online. You just do a Google search, and you might find some pictures. So really talking to kids at an early age and stressing the importance. The problem is a lot of times developmentally kids don't really tend to care. Adolescents tend to think they're invincible and that they're also they're on stage all the time. That everyone thinks they're great, and that kind of developmental mindset doesn't always lend itself to future helping in the future. But really, it could affect your job, your ability to get a job. It could affect your ability to really get in college. It can cause you to get in trouble with legally. It can cause relationship problems. Those are some negative aspects of it. In many cases, it doesn't cause too many problems, but it's out there. And I think at the core of all this, what I'm saying is that privacy is kind of, it's not a thing of the past, but privacy is different now than it was even 10 years ago. So if someone wants to be more of a private person, that's something they really need to think about. If they want everyone knowing everything they're doing. So it's important for people to talk to kids about this on a consistent basis. Mm-hmm. And if things do come up, point it out to them.
And be smart about it. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, then I think, Dr. Hartke, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, and I think Kelly's going to sign us off.
Wow, what a lot of information. I know that I learned about things on like being able to block things on cell phones that I never knew existed. Thank you for joining our webinar on iSocialSkills. There is an exit survey which we need everyone attending to fill out. The discussion board is now open and available for the next 7 days on the NJCTS website for any additional questions that were not covered in tonight's presentation. That website is www.njcts.org. Our next presentation on medications management for tics and TS, presented by Dr. Mark Mintz, is scheduled for May 8th, 2013. This ends tonight's webinar. Thank you, Dr. Hartke, for your presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending.